Welcome to episode 1 of the Partnerships podcast in association with Aviva and Insurtech UK. My name's Steve Whitelock, Group Innovation Business Partner here at Aviva, and I'm delighted to say that I'm joined today by Melissa Collett from Insurtech UK, who's joining me as a co-host.
Thank you for inviting me.
No, it's lovely to have you here joining us today. Perhaps it'd be good just to start off, just give us a little bit of insight into what is going on at Insurtech UK at the moment.
Sure. So Insurtech UK is a trade association for insurtechs. We have over 140 insurtechs and 40 insurers and partners in our membership. And we exist to help our members to scale and to grow.
Brilliant. And I think that's really, that really plays in nicely to what we're going to be talking about today. So today's episode is all about from build to buy, and what we're going to do is start exploring the question of why partner. And to help us in that discussion, we're joined by two brilliant guests in the studio. We're joined by Simon Randall, CEO of Pimloc, and we're joined by Paul Welsh, Head of Group Innovation here at Aviva. Welcome to both of you.
Hi.
How are you?
Very good, thank you. Thanks for inviting us in.
No, it's great to have you. Simon, perhaps I could come to you first. It'd be really good, I think, to hear just a little bit about the Pimloc story and how that journey has, I guess, found you now working with an insurer yourself.
Yeah, I'm very happy to tell the story. Very good to have you here. I run a company called Pimloc. We are a privacy and intelligence platform. So we help public and private organizations manage personal and sensitive data and images, video and now audio. And as you know, everyone's been building out cameras across lots of different estates in businesses, on the police forces and body-worn cameras, drones, dash cams. Everybody's got a smartphone. And all that video that's being captured is now appearing in lots of people's kind of work streams and processes and workflows. We have a solution that allows, a range of different sectors to manage that video so that either they can supply it to individuals, they can run models on it, they can store it, they can use it, they can share it and collaborate with it.
Yeah.
And we've been providing that into public safety, kind of policing, district attorneys, legal, into schools, transport networks, healthcare environments, lots of places where there's lots of very sensitive data. Incident happens and they have to kind of take the video and do something with it. And we've had a hypothesis for a while that that video is going to start to make its way into the claims process. Because, if something happens at work, there's an incident, something happens on the street, something happens in a bar or a restaurant or a supermarket, there's now video footage of that event. And so as more and more video starts to make its way into the claims process, providing tools that allow those teams to very quickly and efficiently be able to anonymize that data. So anonymize everything except for the person that was involved in the claim so that you can manage your privacy and compliance risk, but more importantly, so you can use the video, because actually it's very good evidence of what happened.
Exactly.
And so in the past there's been very complicated videos with lots of people in environments where the cameras are moving, where it's just not possible manually to redact those, and therefore they wouldn't have been able to be used. And so our mission is to make that video usable. Sorry, a very long answer to your initial question, but that's what we do.
Yeah, and I'm going to geek out a little bit here because I actually wrote a university assignment last year about the involvement of tech, in particular AI, and the impact that can have on the insurance industry. And I think that, as you've articulated there, we're seeing more and more cameras everywhere, even from the humble doorbell right the way through to police body-worn cameras and CCTV. So it's a world that's continuing to evolve. So it's really interesting to hear how you've kind of your company has been built around that and how you're now tackling that going forward.
Yeah, and actually, your claims teams have a very hard job because in some sectors, like if it's a school, it tends to be CCTV. So fixed camera, kind of a fixed scene because it's inside a school environment, children moving around. If you're on a bus, fixed camera inside a bus, very similar environment. Your claims teams get videos from everywhere. So, it could be a Ring doorbell, it could be a dash cam from a car, it could be CCTV from a million different environments. And they have to have systems that allow them to very quickly process those. And whilst it sounds simple, the technical implications of being able to do detection and tracking in those environments is quite tricky. And so that's kind of where we come in.
Brilliant.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, the complexity of it does seem enormous. I guess I'm really interested to hear from Paul. Why should insurance companies develop, these partnerships instead of developing this kind of technology in-house?
Yeah, sure. And, let's think about what an insurer does and the vast array of activity that happens that's going on. We always have to make quick decisions about, do we build this ourselves, do we buy? And obviously there are things that we really would want to invest in, and that's our kind of jewel in the crown. So things like pricing, underwriting, our customer experience is really important, and we need control over that, and we need to be able to design it the way we want. But I think I kind of think about this, it's a bit like baking a cake, right? So if you bake a cake yourself, you've got full control over all the ingredients, you can put whatever you want into it, you can design it however you want, but do you know what? It takes quite a lot of effort, and you know, often costs more, weirdly, these days, when you're trying to make something. And you know, these things can go wrong. You know, you can come out and end up with a pancake rather than a cake. So I kind of think a partnership is really about, it's a bit like going to a bakery where, you know, that hard work has been done already in the ingredients. And you can think more about the innovation. You can think about how that's going to work with your customer experience, eating of the cake rather than the kind of core ingredients. But it's a hard balance always. And I think for us as insurers, really focusing our build efforts on our real competitive advantage areas, and then getting help and understanding where people have developed real solutions to help build those out.
I love that cake analogy. I wish I could outsource my cake baking. I think that'd be better for all concerned.
It's right, because you know, there are events where only a homemade cake is going to do, right? But you know, sometimes Colin the Caterpillar does a great job.
He really does.
Are we Colin? Yeah.
Do you like being likened to Colin?
I mean, I'm quite happy to be likened to Colin. I think, yeah, you know, analogies aside, we could be the cherry, we could be the jam, we could be Colin, that's fine. Yeah.
I mean, I think it'd be interesting, though, to sort of ask you a similar question from the other perspective. You know, why should you consider, you know, partnering with insurance companies instead of going it independently?
I mean, we have very similar to the way you've articulated. We have a very similar challenge, albeit we're a slightly smaller business. You know, prioritizing what the team work on all the time is very important for us. And so being very clear about where our core IP is. And so we focus very, very heavily on solving the problem of how do we build a system that's performant across all the video types, basically. And that means that we then have a really good advantage that we can take that into lots of different sectors. Because unfortunately, the video challenge sits quite horizontally in most different industries. And so because we've been very clear about where we're adding value, that means that we can partner with, you know, Aviva, who, you know, we don't understand risk and we don't understand insurance pricing, but we do understand video. Yeah. And so we can provide very specialist tools into the teams that need them, and leave you guys to worry about, you know, the insurance side of the business.
I think so. Yeah.
There's very similar parallels in our other sectors, actually, where, you know, in the police, for example, they can focus on their operational needs, and we can provide them tools to free up time when they're managing the video. And so, you know, it's very much about just finding where our core IP sits and making sure that we can slot that into the other businesses. And the good thing is that it's not, you know, we're not competing with your internal teams because, you know, they've got other things to worry about, like, you know, how to price some new insurance, how to risk, you know. Turns out the global market's quite uncertain at the moment, and I imagine risks are quite tricky. Exactly. Yes.
Focusing those teams on the things that are kind of really core. It is really important. And if you think about the use case that we've got, you know, you're working with yourself, which is the video redaction. You know, your team's doing that manually, first of all, and it's not the type. It's an important problem for that team, and it degrades the efficiency of the team. But actually, is it something that we'd be able to prioritize for an internal build versus, you know, relaunching our app? It's never going to get there. So, you know, partnering with people who have really solved that problem across other markets that can have a ready-made solution that comes in really, really helps build efficiency into that team. You do lots of that. You improve efficiency no end. Lots of little touch points across the piece. Yeah.
So, you know, what we've found is it's very easy to build a mediocre product, but the challenge is that mediocre actually ends up taking you more manual time. And so we use automation, and we also have an application for review. But that automation has to be so good across all video types in order to genuinely save time for the end users. And so to your point, you know, you could very easily burn 2 years trying to build something to get to the conclusion that, turns out it's quite tricky.
Yes.
And actually, if that's not your focus, you're never going to get something that's going to be good enough. And so in those kind of other areas, I think, you know, being able to partner is great.
Yeah.
And, you know, the fact that we've been able to partner with you guys to bring the solution into your teams is fantastic. And now we've seen, we did the initial kind of 6-month trial,
didn't
and
we?
now we're fully deployed. And actually, we're getting really good feedback from the teams. We're saving time, and we're now starting to find that there's additional use cases alongside it where actually, if you could anonymize video, you can use it for a bunch of other things, and you can collaborate with it. And so, yeah, it's very exciting.
We talked earlier about you being at Insurtech potentially.
Yes.
I mean, do you see yourself going and focusing more and more on insurance? And what are the interesting challenges thrown up by the insurance sector?
Yeah, so I think as I kind of mentioned earlier, one of the unique challenges that the claims guys have is they can get images, video, audio, text from anywhere, because especially in general insurance, the video content that's being captured everywhere is quite diverse, and so it could go all the way from a small portrait smartphone video to a wide-angle dashcam video going down the motorway to some video footage in a cafe. And so having systems that are good enough to process all that's very interesting. And so but at the moment we're working very much in the post-event incident. So something bad happens, there's a claim, video's pulled, it's put into the claim, it's put through the workflow process and goes through. We're also starting to discuss some use cases where people are looking to deploy live cameras into certain environments so that they can live monitor and see what's happening to try and avoid the incidents happening in the first place.
Prevent the loss from occurring.
Correct. And
mitigate risk.
And if you can suddenly make live video feeds anonymized and streamed to a team who can evaluate an environment, be it in a restaurant or a hotel or somewhere, and say, actually, I can see there's some risk here. I can see there's some patterns of behavior here. But on anonymized data, again, you can start to help your customers avoid those risks in the first place. And so rather than being a kind of a reactive, and again, I don't understand pricing or risk, but rather than being in a reactive position, you can then start to understand how can I work with our customers to mean that they actually claim less and there's less incidents and their employees are happier and less things happen. And so I think over time, moving more onto that proactive side, it's going to be really interesting. Because I think the more you can make use of all this data that's now available, the better. But in order to use it, you need really strong privacy controls to start with so that you can make it available to the business.
I feel like there's an opportunity here for AI. You mentioned that earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, AI is, the world of AI is expanding rapidly, isn't it? And, it's certainly becoming more on everybody's radar, I think. And that's going to shift the landscape, I guess, again, going forward in terms of how products evolve and develop. And I guess a question to you, Paul, flowing through from that, where the world is evolving and changing, we've talked about the fact, partnering with Pimloc at Aviva is great. How from within Aviva are, parts of the business looking at partnerships? Now, I know within the innovation team, we have a really strong focus on partnerships and working outside of the business to bring really exciting founders and tech in. But how is that being received in Aviva, and how are you seeing that journey evolve?
Yeah, absolutely.
Over time?
I think it's really interesting. And, being able to introduce partnerships and external solutions into the organisation has a huge benefit both on the culture of the organisation, but also the way people think and open up. And I really think Aviva really has its head up and is noticing what's out there and really speaking how really thinking about how we can combine solutions and work with partners to create real collaborative, solutions that are right for our customers. Really good examples. I mean, we talked a little bit about those use cases that you've just discovered. I think that's where the real power comes in, when you can work with an organisation that does have that skill set, real understanding, and can actually work with a technology or a solution provider that is an expert in that space. And you bring those two things together, the customer understanding, the risk understanding, the technology understanding, and you can start to really uncover those use cases that maybe are not standard patterns, are not going on. And I think, we're starting to establish that with you. We're starting to establish that with other partners as well. And I think that's where we get a real power, a power from the two parts coming together.
Yeah, actually, from our side, we've engaged with a lot of kind of innovation groups, kind of large corporates, and a lot of the time, you have a very good initial discussion with the innovation team. And then it takes about a month to work out they're completely disconnected from the operational side of the business. And then you have to go have all those conversations again. Whereas actually with Aviva, even in that first meeting, it was very clear that the innovation team had a very good understanding of the operational challenges in the teams. Yeah. And then very quickly we were able to say, okay, here's these teams which I think have a real burning need for this right now. Yeah. Let's get the product into them. And actually that process flowed through really well. And that's a really good thing. And so I think having the innovation team's very well connected and hardwired into the business operationally means you don't waste time in what they kind of innovation theatre for a few months. And actually it's much more about how do we go solve a problem for a team that's using this stuff every day.
A lot of our insurtechs talk about the slow no. So
Yes.
it sounds like you managed to
We're
avoid
working really
that
hard
situation.
to remove that and to create these processes where, we can really establish quickly, is there a problem that's solved? Is this burning for the business right now? And is this solution right? And then how quickly do we get into a test and learn pattern, right? So that we can get something up and running and prove it in the lightest way possible. And then we can really establish value and bring that business case to the fore. And that helps us get to a scale position. As you said, we did a 6-month pilot with Pimloc, and quite quickly we've seen the value, and that's turned into a longer term relationship.
Yeah, a slow no is the worst thing.
Yes.
Basically.
Yeah.
That's what kills businesses, basically. And that's also what stops people then engaging with certain sectors. Because if the sales cycle is long and there's a good chance that it's going to drop off, then people will back off and go to other sectors. So.
Yeah, and I guess, Melissa, from your perspective, Insurtech UK, kind of looking across both parts of it, how have you seen that evolve? Have you seen partnerships developing more broadly, I guess, over the last couple of years?
Oh, definitely, because initially Insurtech was all about disrupting and competing with incumbents, but it's moved really towards a situation where most Insurtechs are collaborating and partnering. And so our members really want to meet companies like Aviva who are willing to embrace the technology, willing to pilot things, and willing to not do this performative type of activity, but actually come with a problem and then look for a partner to provide a solution. And I think this is a great story to share with the wider community. And we'd love to get you more involved as a company providing these insurance solutions through tech. To say we've got more where that came from.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's a really nice way, I guess, to lead into a final question, really, about, we're obviously doing stuff in the here and now with an eye on the future. The world is evolving. We're all not sure where it's going, particularly from a tech perspective.
Yeah.
What do both of you see as kind of the long-term strategic benefits and values that partnerships can bring for both of you, actually?
So we have a very good understanding of kind of the multimodal landscape. Actually, what we lack is the real deep understanding of what the burning problems are for the teams every day.
It's exactly the same.
What's great now is because we have active teams using the product and we're having discussions very regularly, we're now starting to understand, because we're solving a small part of the workflow problem, but actually, how do you find the video? How do you manage it? What do you do with it? What happens to it afterwards? How do you know who's look? And so there's a much broader workflow that we can then start to work with you on. And certainly on the more, I'd say, proactive side, starting to have some conversations around, well, how could we help empower you to be on the front foot for some of these risks and claims?
Yeah.
How can we use live video? How can we use live sensing? So getting, the fact that we have a really good product in the here and now means it's much easier to have some of those more speculative conversations, which normally may be a slow no. But the fact that we have, an existing relationship means you can manage some more experimental conversations on top. Whereas without the existing business, it would be very hard to do that.
I think that brings me on to a point that I would make, which is around agility as well. Partnering with a smaller organization, which is more nimble, can make changes very quickly, doesn't have to think about the whole system, means that you can actually try things out quickly at lower cost, and then scale where you find the value, which is harder to do when you're doing that in the core of an organization where you do need to think of the impacts around the piece and the resource, etc. So I think with partnership, we often do things in experimental basis first, short term, maybe unconnected, and then integrate later when we've got confidence on the solution and the scalability of it.
Yeah, we see that in a range of sectors actually, where we have end user teams will use our end solution directly, and then once we're embedded, we then look at integrating into existing, in your instance, be claims management systems.
Exactly.
Many others, it's digital evidence management or content management, those sorts of things. So.
Brilliant. And I think that's a really good way to kind of wrap things up, because we've talked here today about, how important that sort of journey is up front, avoiding some of the slow no's, right? But actually what the longer term benefits are, particularly with tech evolving, and the fact that, partners can bring an external lens into the business, and likewise, a company like Aviva can share what's going on more broadly across the landscape. So look, time flies when you're having fun, right? And we've reached the end today. That brings us to the end of episode 1 of the Partnerships podcast. I just want to say a massive thank you to Paul, massive thank you to Simon as well, and a massive thank you to Melissa, my co-host, thank you so much for coming in and joining us today. I hope you enjoyed today. Do join us again for the next episode. Thank you very much.